Please subscribe and share for more story. Clara never forgot the sentence that almost ended her life. "You're going to burn with this house, you wretched old woman." The voice came from her only child, Damon, spoken in the narrow hallway of her old Ohio home during a freezing January night. Clara smelled gasoline before she saw the container at his feet. Damon stood 10 feet away, his face lit by the porch bulb. Clara had kissed that face goodnight for 23 years, but now it looked empty. No warmth, no doubt, only decision. He held a matchbook like it belonged in his hand. Clara understood instantly. This was not anger. It was a final choice. The gasoline had already been dumped over the old rug Henry bought when his carpentry business finally earned a real contract. It had soaked into the base of the staircase Henry built board by board. Clara's heart punched against her ribs. Damon did not speak again. He struck the match. There was a flare of light, and he let it fall. Flame rushed forward like something alive. Clara heard the lock click on the front door, then Damon's footsteps leaving, then his engine driving into the snowy dark. Clara stood alone inside her burning home. Clara did not scream. She stared at the flames as they spread across the floor. The living room curtains caught first, then the air filled with heat and smoke. She turned toward the wall of family photographs and watched them melt and fall. Her wedding picture with Henry curled and darkened. Clara whispered, "Not like this, not without finishing what I must finish." She reached for a small, hidden object beneath her nightgown, the thing Henry once pressed into her hand when he was dying. It was her last piece of protection. The smoke climbed upward, stealing the air. Clara dropped to her knees, remembering what her father had told her as a little girl during a field burn. Fire is not evil. Fire clears what is already dead. Now the fire was clearing her son's love. Glass shattered at the front window as heat expanded. The house groaned under the pressure. Clara crawled toward the dining room, away from the worst flames. She grabbed a cloth, soaked it at the kitchen sink, covered her mouth, and moved low across the floor. She needed to reach the pantry. Under one loose floorboard there was a metal lockbox Henry told her to hide if things ever became truly bad. Tonight they were. Clara forced herself across the wood floor, listening to popping beams overhead. The fire spread faster than she believed possible. She reached the pantry door, coughing into the soaked cloth. Her lungs hurt, but she kept going. She found a small pry bar behind flour sacks and worked it under the board. The nails resisted, then gave way. She lifted the plank and saw the metal box, warm but still intact. Inside were documents Henry had sworn must never reach Damon. Clara wrapped the box in a towel and shoved it beneath her nightgown again. The dining room was blocked by flames, no escape there. She turned toward the pantry window. It was tiny, but Clara was thin. The latch was stiff from years of paint. She grabbed a heavy can and struck the glass until it broke. Cold winter air rushed inside. Clara took one breath and climbed through, falling into her frozen garden. Her ankle bent painfully, but she pushed herself along the ground until she felt safe from the heat. She lay on the snow-dusted soil, listening to the distant siren that meant neighbors had called help. "Good," Clara whispered. "Let them believe an accident. Silence will be my weapon." Laura stayed on the ground until neighbors ran outside. Mrs. Gable, from across the street, wrapped a robe around Clara's shoulders. "Clara, dear heaven, what happened?" she cried. Clara forced shaking words. "An accident. The stove. Maybe gas, I don't know. No one imagined a son could do this." When firefighters arrived, they fought the flames for an hour. Dawn arrived gray and heavy. Clara sat in an ambulance, wrapped in blankets while a paramedic checked her pulse. Damon suddenly came running down the street on foot, shouting her name with perfect panic. He searched the yard and ruins, his breath uneven. Clara watched him, unnoticed, from the ambulance. For one moment his act dropped. His eyes scanned the ruined pantry window, then the property, where the floorboard hid the box. He expected her body. He expected the box destroyed. Seeing neither, he froze. Clara saw his face go pale. The police ruled the fire likely accidental. At the hospital, She stayed 3 days. Nurses asked gentle questions. A detective asked harder ones. Clara answered every question with confusion. I just remember heat and the window breaking. Everyone believed she was simply a frightened elderly woman lucky to live. Clara allowed it. Weakness made her invisible, and invisibility was power. On the 4th day, Damon arrived with grocery store lilies and a shaky voice. Mom, I can't believe this happened. I heard the explosion from town, he said. He tried to meet her gaze, but his eyes slid away. Clara answered softly, Don't worry, Damon. Houses can be rebuilt. Inside, her heart whispered, Souls pay differently. That evening, Clara lay in her hospital bed, touching the metal box she had hidden beneath the mattress. A nurse named Brenda called her recovery a miracle. Clara smiled faintly. The fire had not spared her. It had sharpened her. She stayed quiet, polite, forgetful. Damon visited only once before discharge. He spoke mostly about insurance. It's a total loss, Mom. But paperwork is already in motion. Clara nodded like a confused parent. She let fear cover her strength. Upon release, Damon drove her to his modern, suburban home. His wife, Raya, greeted Clara with sugary kindness and placed her in a small back room near the laundry. You can rest here and won't hear any noise, Raya said. Clara recognized the tactic: distance, isolation, control. At night she heard Damon and Raya whispering in the kitchen. Raya hissed. She wasn't supposed to survive. If she talks, we lose everything. Damon answered. Then we finish what we started. She's old, accidents happen. Clara closed her eyes and formed a decision. The next morning, Clara greeted them with a gentle smile, acting unaware. She thanked them for breakfast. Strange, she said lightly. I hardly remember anything from the fire at all. Damon watched her carefully. Maybe that's for the best. Fresh starts help. Clara nodded. Yes, forgetting helps. But the heart never forgets what fire meant to erase. Raya dropped a sugar bowl in shock. Days passed slowly. Clara stayed quiet, always watching. When Damon and Raya left for development lunches, Clara searched his office. She picked a cheap desk lock and found a new insurance policy dated 3 weeks before the fire. Coverage doubled. Beneficiary, Damon. Clara took a picture with a small prepaid phone. She locked everything back and waited outside like a harmless grandmother watching birds. That evening, Raya served tea. Clara smiled. I'm saving my words for when they matter. Raya's expression stiffened. That night, Clara opened the metal box under her bed. It contained Henry's final will, filed in another county. His entire estate, including Clara's burned home, belonged not to Damon, but to another man, Eli Reed. Clara stared at the name. Who are you? She whispered. The fire had not destroyed the truth. It had revealed it. Henry's handwriting told the rest. He once loved a young woman named Teresa Reed. She left carrying Henry's child. Years later, an adult son, Eli, found Henry's shop. Henry gave him answers, not money. He gave him quiet support. Henry wrote, Eli is decent and brave. The man I wish Damon could be. Henry had changed his will to protect his legacy from Damon's greed. Now Clara understood why Henry trembled when he gave her the first lockbox. She lay back in her narrow bed and whispered, Damon burned his future for nothing. The next month crawled forward. Damon tried to push her to sign insurance forms. Raya pretended kindness, but watched Clara like a guard. One night, Clara heard them discuss ways to make the old woman disappear. Clara realized she must move carefully. When Damon urged her to visit the property with him, Clara smiled. Yes, let's see what the fire could not destroy. The next morning, she returned to her ruined house alone. Damon protested. She insisted. When she reached the burned remains, she did not cry. She stood among shattered timber and ash and felt strangely steady. The fire had stripped away illusions. Clara went to Henry's old workshop in the yard, found a loose stone with her cane, and uncovered Henry's leather journal and letter. The letter repeated his warning. If the fire ever returns, looked to Eli. Clara sat on the cold workshop floor and read the letter twice. Henry admitted he hid Eli to protect Clara from shock and to shield their life from Damon's anger. Clara did not feel betrayal, only purpose. Henry had seen Damon clearly. Clara now had 2 lockboxes, 2 wills, and a name that represented Henry's true heir. She returned to Damon's home in a taxi that evening. Raya served dinner with fake cheer. Damon cleared his throat. "Tomorrow, Mom, we go to the insurance office. They need your statement." Clara answered softly, "Of course, Damon. But first, you should look at what the fire left behind." He looked confused but agreed to visit the property later. Clara saw anxiety flash across his face. Damon still underestimated her. That night, Clara stared at the ceiling and formed a straightforward plan. She would not accuse. She would not argue. She would not shout. She would let the truth land like a match in a room soaked with Damon's own gasoline. She would let consequences burn on their own. The next morning, she prepared for the quietest kind of revenge, truth spoken to the right ears. She dressed slowly, tucked Henry's journal into her purse, and whispered, "Let the fire finish what it started, but this time it won't be mine." 2 days later, Damon drove Clara back to the ruins. He tried to play the part of the worried son. "Mom, you really shouldn't push yourself. You need rest," he murmured as he helped her out of the car. Clara leaned on her cane and nodded politely, but she did not slow down. She walked through the broken gate and stopped where the living room used to be. Damon watched her carefully. "This is hard, isn't it? I still can't believe a gas leak caused all of this." Clara turned her face toward him. "Sometimes, what destroys a house isn't a leak," she replied. "Sometimes it's a person." Damon's jaw twitched, but he kept smiling, pretending not to understand. Clara finally asked, "Tell me something, Damon. When did you take out that new insurance policy?" He blinked, confused. "What policy?" Clara's eyes did not move. "The one naming you, not me, as the beneficiary." His smile slipped at the edges. Then he laughed, forced and awkward. "Mom, you must be mixing things up." Clara said nothing. Silence felt louder than accusation. Damon shifted uneasily, suddenly eager to leave the property. But Clara was not finished. She told him she wanted to visit Henry's workshop alone. Damon hesitated, but agreed. Inside the blackened workshop, Clara took her time. Damon waited outside by the car, pacing. Clara ran her hand over Henry's tools, burned, rusted, but still hanging like memories. She sat on a stool and spoke aloud, knowing Damon could not hear her. "You thought fire erased me, Damon, but fire only cleared the dead things." When she emerged again, Damon looked uncomfortable. "Mom, ready to go? We shouldn't stay." Clara agreed. In the car, Damon tried casual conversation. "Insurance wants a quick statement. We can settle everything fast." Clara answered calmly. "You seem very invested in speed." Damon gripped the wheel. "Mom, we all want closure." Clara stared through the windshield. "Closure comes when truth is spoken." Damon did not answer. When they returned to his home, Raya met them at the door, her eyes sharp. "Everything all right?" she asked. Damon nodded stiffly. Raya studied Clara, with forced sympathy. "Must have been overwhelming." Clara gave a thin smile. "Not overwhelming, clarifying." That night, Clara heard Damon and Raya whisper again, but this time they sounded worried. Raya said, "She's asking too many questions." Damon snapped, "She's old. She can't prove anything." Clara lay in the dark, calm and awake. Proof was not her weapon, timing was. Clara knew Damon's greed did not begin with the fire. It began years ago, before Henry died. She remembered Damon as a clever boy with quick answers and a pride that never softened. Henry adored him, defended him, excused him. Clara worked long hours sewing to cover late bills while Damon asked for money without remorse. As Damon grew older, he became sharper, colder. When Henry's breathing turned weak and medical bills crushed them, Damon stopped visiting. He came home only to argue. Clara remembered one night, clearly. Henry lay in bed, struggling for air, when Damon burst in and shouted, "I'm tired of this dying house and this dying life." Clara begged him to calm down, reminding him everything would be his someday. Damon looked at her with disgust. "When you're both gone, maybe this place will finally be worth something." Henry had heard it all. Clara saw his pain. 6 months later, Henry died, and Damon did not shed a tear. He wore a new suit to the funeral and met with the lawyer before comforting his mother. Clara learned then that Damon saw life only as value. He measured grief in profit. Now, years later, Damon still believed a house was more important than blood. One afternoon, when Clara still owned her peace, Raya asked casually, "Have you thought of selling this house? It's too much for someone your age." Clara smiled kindly, but stayed silent. Raya pushed harder. "With this amount of land, a developer could pay a fortune. You could buy a little condo somewhere warm." Clara refused to answer, but inside, she felt a deep warning. Soon after, she overheard Damon and Raya outside. Raya said, "If she sells, we can invest with my brother. We need her to agree." Damon replied, irritated, "She has to sign. The trust complicates things." "Raya," whispered the line Clara never forgot. "Then make her sign. Cry, lie, whatever works." Damon tried. For months he pushed. Clara always answered the same, "Your father wanted this house untouched." Damon grew quiet. Then, strangely, he became kind. He brought flowers. He hugged Clara. Raya hosted dinners. For a moment Clara felt hope, but she mistook planning for love. They were softening her for the match. On the night of the fire, Clara saw no hesitation in Damon's eyes. The greed that had grown inside him finally reached flame. But she did not let that night define her. She healed quietly. She asked for nothing. Her silence made Damon restless. He needed control, and Clara refused to give him emotional reactions. When she mentioned returning to Willow Lane again, both Damon and Raya tried to discourage her. Clara insisted, claiming she wanted closure. Damon finally agreed, because he believed he had already won. The next visit changed everything. Clara asked Damon to stand inside the ruins with her. She pointed at the beams, at the scorched staircase. "Your father built this step by step," she said. Damon swallowed. "Yeah, he did." Clara asked gently, "When did admiration turn into impatience for you?" Damon frowned. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Clara answered with a whisper, "You wanted what Henry built, but not the work that came with it." Damon stiffened. Clara didn't accuse. She didn't raise her voice. She simply let silence land again. Damon finally muttered, "You're tired, Mom. You're imagining things." Clara nodded politely. She let him believe that. He drove her home, unaware that Clara now held the one name that could end his expectations forever. Clara knew she needed to contact Eli Reed, but she did not rush. Damon and Raya were still dangerous. That week, Clara observed their routine. Damon spent mornings on the phone discussing real estate ventures. Raya scheduled lunches with investors. Their impatience grew. Raya said one evening, "We need that statement to insurance. Once they issue the check, everything moves forward." Clara looked up gently. "Insurance feels complicated. Maybe I should take my time." Raya's smile vanished. "Time is money, Clara." Clara sipped water. Grief isn't a business transaction. Damon slammed his hand on the table, just once, but enough. Clara stood. "I'm going to bed." In her room, she pulled out Henry's leather journal. It listed dates, payments, and the name of a town, Portsmouth, Ohio. The journal also had a photograph, Henry with a young woman and a small boy. Clara studied the boy's eyes, steady, serious. She wondered if Eli already knew Henry had passed. She wondered if Eli knew he was heir to a legacy Damon tried to burn. Clara folded the photo carefully. Tomorrow, she would travel, not to meet lawyers, but to follow Henry's instructions. Fire might have destroyed wood and photographs, but it had opened a door Henry meant her to walk through. Clara told Damon she needed fresh air the next morning. Damon offered to drive, but Clara insisted on going alone. "I'm not helpless," she said. He hesitated, then nodded. When Damon left the house to run errands, Clara called a taxi. She traveled quietly to Portsmouth, clutching her purse. The ride was long, but Clara felt steady. The town was small, quiet, and lined with winter trees. Clara followed the address in Henry's journal to a modest carpentry workshop. A sign above the door read, "Reed and Son Woodworks." Clara entered. The place smelled of cedar and varnish. A man in his 40s looked up from a workbench. He had Henry's hands. Clara studied him. "Are you Eli Reed?" she asked. He nodded politely. "Yes, ma'am. Can I help you?" Clara's voice softened. "I knew your father. His name was Henry." Eli went still. He set down his sandpaper. "Henry," he repeated slowly. "He helped me once." Clara nodded. "He helped you more than you know." Eli stared at her with confusion and guarded pain. Clara took out the letter and placed it gently on the table. "Your father kept promises. Now you need to see what he left behind." Eli hesitated, but opened the envelope. His eyes widened as he read. The fire had found its path. Eli read Henry's words twice, then set the letter down carefully, as if it were fragile. He whispered, "I didn't expect anything from him. I never asked." Clara nodded. "That is exactly why he trusted you." Eli sat at the workbench, thoughtful. Clara continued, "Henry wanted you to protect what mattered. He feared Damon's choices." At the mention of Damon, Eli looked puzzled. Clara explained slowly about the fire. Not details of suffering, but the betrayal beneath it. Eli clenched his jaw. "Your own son planned that?" Clara nodded without emotion. "He saw the house as a prize, not a home." Eli exhaled. "And Henry made me the heir?" Clara opened the small metal box from her purse and slid the legal will toward him. "It is valid. Filed in Portsmouth. Henry made sure of that." Eli stared at the page, but did not reach for it immediately. "What do you want from me?" Clara answered, "Nothing. Only that you hold what Henry meant for you. I will not ask for money. I will not ask for favors." Eli looked surprised. "Then why come?" Clara folded her hands. "Because Damon believes he owns the ashes of my life. I want him to learn that fire does not hand out rewards." Eli offered Clara tea in the workshop's small break room. He sat across from her, still trying to understand. "Did Henry ever tell you why he didn't come find me again?" he asked quietly. Clara shook her head. "He said he didn't want to disrupt the life his son already resented." Eli nodded slowly. "He worried I'd replace Damon." Clara responded, "No. He worried that Damon would try to take from you." They shared a long silence, not uncomfortable, simply thoughtful. Eli finally said, "Show me everything." Clara opened the journal, pointing to Henry's notes and dates. This was Henry preparing his legacy with purpose, not guilt. Eli asked gently, "Do you want justice?" Clara shook her head. "I want Damon to face what he created." Eli leaned forward. "I'm not a fighter, Clara. I'm not a man who wants conflict." Clara smiled at him. "Henry didn't ask you to fight. He asked you to stand." Eli looked at the workshop walls. "I can do that." Before Clara left, Eli said, "If you ever need a safe place, you knock here." Clara nodded, grateful, but steady. She did not want safety. She wanted truth to return home. When Clara returned to Damon's house, Damon was waiting in the kitchen. His tone was sharp. "Where were you?" "We needed to go to the insurance office." Clara hung her coat and replied calmly, "I changed my plans." Raya stepped into the room, arms crossed. "You can't just disappear. We're trying to manage everything for you." Clara lowered herself into a chair. "I didn't ask you to manage anything." Damon tried to regain control. "Mom, listen. We're all under stress. We need to finalize the case." Clara met his eyes. "You seem anxious for money." Raya's voice hardened. "It's not about money, it's about rebuilding." Clara nodded thoughtfully. "Rebuilding usually begins with ownership." Damon stiffened. Raya shot Damon a look, silently warning him not to react. Clara simply stood. "I'm going to rest now." In her room, Clara hid the journal beneath her mattress. Damon knocked on her door later. Mom, we need to talk tomorrow. Please don't complicate this. Clara smiled without opening the door. Good night, Damon. She let him sit with his worry. Sometimes fear grows best in quiet rooms. The next morning, Raya prepared breakfast with forced politeness. Clara thanked her. Damon sat across from Clara, trying to appear patient. Mom, I made an appointment with a claims officer for tomorrow morning. You need to be there. Clara stirred her tea. I'll think about it. Damon pressed. There's nothing to think about. Clara looked up slowly. Then the meeting will survive a small delay. Raya muttered under her breath. We don't have time for this. Clara watched them both. Time belongs to the one who is waiting for nothing. Damon stood abruptly and left the table. Raya followed him. Clara heard their voices behind the closed door. Raya hissed. She's stalling. I knew she remembered something. Damon answered. She has no proof. Raya snapped. Proof doesn't matter if she starts talking. Clara sipped tea quietly. She did not want arguments. She wanted Damon to reveal himself without a single accusation. That afternoon, Clara requested to return to her house again. Damon resisted, but agreed. He believed supervision gave him power. Clara knew it only gave him exposure. Damon drove, unaware the road itself was narrowing around him. At the property, workers were beginning to clear debris. Damon spoke loudly, pretending to direct things. Clara ignored him and approached a firefighter who recognized her from the night of the blaze. She asked simple questions, structural, procedural. Damon stiffened, suddenly uncomfortable. Clara did not imply blame. She simply existed, calm and steady, while Damon lost composure beside her. The firefighter mentioned the locked front door that night and how unusual that seemed. Damon quickly interrupted. Mom probably forgot she locked it herself. Clara nodded politely, but did not confirm anything. Damon became uneasy. Why are we even here? He demanded. Clara turned to him. Because there are some things a fire cannot erase. Damon faltered. Clara asked him, do you remember what your father valued most? Damon answered too quickly, family. Clara studied him. He valued character. Damon looked away. They returned to the car in silence. Clara had no need to accuse him. Guilt was already pulling at his shirt collar. That evening, Clara stayed in her room and wrote a list of what remained true. Henry's will, Eli's name, the insurance policy Damon falsified, and Damon's fear. Over dinner, Damon tried kindness again. Mom, you know we love you. Clara looked at him. Love does not hide matches. Damon's face tightened. Why are you talking like that? Clara answered, because truth makes some people nervous. Raya snapped. Enough. Damon has been nothing but supportive. Clara raised an eyebrow. Support built on expectation is not support. Damon pushed his chair back, angry. Clara remained calm. I'm tired. I'll sleep now. In her room, she packed her purse with Henry's journal, the photo, and the legal will. She was ready for one final step. She did not want confrontation. She wanted clarity. The next morning, she would go to the police, not to accuse Damon of a crime she could not prove, but to present documents Damon never suspected existed. Not rage, just paperwork. Fire can destroy walls, but paper remains. At the police station, Clara requested to speak to Detective Miller, the same officer who questioned her in the hospital. She sat calmly as he entered the small interview room. Mrs. Hale, he greeted. She now used her maiden name again. You remembered something? Clara shook her head.
No.
I want to provide documentation regarding ownership of the property that burned. The detective listened as Clara placed the legal will on the table. Clara kept her tone factual. The beneficiary is not my son. The house was not his asset. Any claim filed under his name would be inaccurate. The detective studied the papers. Do you believe there was intent? Miller asked. Clara answered carefully. I am saying paperwork should reflect truth. Miller nodded slowly. We may need to contact the insurance company. Clara stood. Do whatever the law requires. She did not accuse Damon of wrongdoing. She simply placed Henry's intentions into motion. Fire did not need her anger. It needed her patience. Clara left the station and walked into cold air feeling lighter. The truth was not explosive, it was administrative. When Clara returned home, Damon was pacing. Raya stood with crossed arms. "Where were you?" Damon demanded. Clara removed her coat. "Running errands." Damon's eyes narrowed. "We got a call. Insurance needs to review documents again." Clara nodded softly. "That sounds reasonable." Damon stepped closer. "What did you do?" Clara met his eyes. "I corrected ownership." Damon's face drained of color. Raya whispered harshly, "You're ruining everything." Clara shook her head gently. "No, I am simply returning what was never yours." Damon's voice rose. "Do you think a piece of paper can change anything?" Clara stood steady. "It already has." Damon backed away, unsettled by her calm. Raya grabbed her purse. "We'll fight this," she snapped. Clara nodded once. "Fight if you must. Fire burns until it has nothing left to consume." Damon stared at her, silent, unsure. Clara went to her room. She felt no triumph. She simply felt finished. The next week unfolded slowly. Calls came from lawyers, insurance agents, and investigators. Damon tried to argue, but signatures and legal filings spoke louder than emotion. The insurance claims stalled. Realtors backed out. Investors stopped answering Damon's messages. Raya became distant and frustrated. Clara kept her routine simple: tea, quiet walks, reading Henry's journal. Damon hovered, unsure whether to charm or threaten. One morning, he muttered, "I never meant for things to get so complicated." Clara did not respond. Damon whispered, almost to himself, "I did everything for us." Clara finally answered, "You did everything for yourself." Damon looked wounded, not from accusation, but from truth. Raya packed a suitcase 2 days later. She left without saying goodbye. Damon stood in the driveway staring at nothing, his hands empty. Clara watched from the window. Greed had promised Damon greatness, but it delivered silence. Fire clears what is already dead. Clara moved out a month later and settled in a small rental near Portsmouth. She visited Eli's workshop often, not with demands, not with guilt, simply with presence. Eli asked occasionally, "What will you do now?" Clara always answered, "Live." Damon called once, weeks later. His voice was small. "Mom, can we talk?" Clara breathed in. "We can speak when you remember how to see people instead of property." She did not hang up in anger. She simply set the phone down. Some lessons do not need lectures. They require distance. Clara sat outside her new home and watched a winter sun break through clouds. She no longer feared fire. She understood it. Fire consumes lies, pretenses, ambitions built on others' backs. Fire clears land so new things can grow. And Clara, at last, was living on cleared land. She whispered to herself, "The house is gone, but I am still standing." Thanks for watching. If you value stories of respect, dignity, and justice, please subscribe. It means more than you know, and it lets me keep sharing the lessons life has carved into me.